Hello and welcome to another episode of Speculative Speculations. I'm Varsha,
I'm Jared.
And I'm Chris.
and this is a series where we talk about speculative stories in all their forms. Today is our final discussion for Reamde by Neal Stephenson. Thank God. And we're done. We're done with that 1047-page book. That's all I'll say about that. And we will be starting Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martin for next from the next episode onwards. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name. I don't think I didn't look up how to say that. The short story for next week is Vaster Than Empire and More Slow by Ursula K. Le Guin. It should be fun. I'm looking forward to a Le Guin short story. And no short story this week because we read about 200 pages of this book, which felt like another 1,000 pages. And that's it. That's sorry. I said I wouldn't rant, but I'm already being weird and snarky about it. I'll shut up. uh, let's go. What did we think of that ending?
Absolutely shit.
Okay, and I thought I was being harsh. Jeez, Chris.
This book's
Oh.
terrible. I'm going to say it.
I
It's absolutely
agree.
terrible.
Oh God. And honestly, I think, Chris, you were saying last time that maybe you haven't sworn off of Neal Stephenson despite this book. I think I might have. I'm kind of done with this author. Yeah.
To be fair, I think Jared liked it a bit more than that.
Okay,
I think.
fair.
So,
Yeah.
I shouldn't.
Let's hear it, Jared, to be the nice guy.
Oh, no, don't rely on me to defend this monstrosity. But, well, what, you guys didn't like it that everybody lived happily ever after, all cutely paired up in couples, and
I mean, everybody didn't live happy after, apart from like the people who had like literal plot armor. Like everybody else is dead. Everybody else, pretty much every other character that's been in the book is dead.
But that's all we cared about was the plot armor characters, right? We didn't care about anybody else.
Well, that's debatable, but yeah. I actually, this sounds terrible. I really could have done with the Zuladan. Like, I mean, that would have been actually something to it. There'd have been something like, oh, right, actually, I was wrong. She was in danger and she sacrificed, but no.
Yeah. Or at least, Richard maybe dying in sacrifice to save Zuler. One or the other. That wouldn't have been as impactful, but it would still be at least something.
But it also would have fit his character, I think, because I think he gave off the impression that he was willing to sacrifice his life for hers, even though, again, weird love connection for an uncle and adopted, niece. That's strange, but, good guy as our Richard, so have to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. Yeah.
Okay. I listened to most of it because it went on for too long. I don't like action sequences, and honestly that's not the part that annoyed me. It was like the last 3 pages that infuriated me, but we'll get there. Jones, how he just gave up? Like, how did he get killed? How was he just like sitting there not trying to save himself or do anything and just musing over a damn mountain lion or whatever it was that he saw? And then
Cougar,
yeah,
I think
cougar.
it was, yeah.
Yes. And then Richard shot him, and that was that. Is that what?
Richard guessed right. That was it. He guessed right about where to shoot.
I see. Okay. Good.
Now,
But I thought he shot him at point blank range. Like he went over to where Jones was, and Jones said something weird, and then Richard shot him in the head. Did he not? Like, I mean, I could be very wrong because, like I said, skim listened.
Skim read. I thought he. Let me see here. Well, that was actually a big problem with a lot of the action in this section.
I was going to say that as well.
Having a lot of trouble keeping track of place, of who was standing where and how far away they were from each other, and because it just seemed like they were like, oh, they see somebody, but then they could do all this stuff before they got anywhere near them to actually shoot at each other. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Why, if they can see each other, why aren't they shooting at each other? And and he had some explanations about long range rifles and shotguns and stuff like that. But there was a lot of other sections around the house and stuff like that where I was just like, I could not picture where everybody was, and it really got confusing at those
Yeah.
points.
I would say this whole 200 pages suffered from that because I kept on thinking to myself, like, say this was a movie. This location would have been spectacular to shoot all this in. I kept on thinking of something like Cliffhanger or something like that, around that stage. And it kept on referring to location as if they kept on climbing up, and I was like, they're already sort of at the top of the mountain in my head, and then they were going up further, and then they were going down, and like location was a really big problem for me because it all became a bit of a mush. And even though they changed location from one, like the house that Chet and all came to, that kind of branch that he was looking at, and then it went to Jake's house, but it all felt very much the same. There was nothing to differentiate any of that, and I'd actually maybe think that maybe that's why he location hopped, because if he hadn't a location hopped the whole way through the first 2/3 of the book, I don't think there'd have been anything to differentiate any of the places they had been through this entire book. If it wasn't in China, if it wasn't the Philippines, of course we spend an awful lot of time in North America as it was, but it meant that none of the action had a place in the story. It was just a continuous wash of action. It was just more action. Spent some time going through mines. They spent some time on bikes, but ultimately, it may as well have been 200 yards apart for all that we kind of realized that within the story. And I think that's why this end section sort of run together an awful lot for me in terms of that, because there were certainly people that died, but again, they were sort of nameless people. You may as well have interchanged Jahander for Zafir or whatever else, because they were all kind of the same character, as in jihadists or whatever. And even Chet and everybody, all those people were sort of just allies of, and nobody really had a time and a place or anything built, which is insane for this book being 1,000 pages long. Surely that should have been the one thing that you should have been able to do in 1,000 pages, is kind of build up some ownership of gravity of death and all of that kind of stuff, but it just didn't really happen for me.
Yeah, I mean that's the part that I found infuriating, because it maintained that tone of not levity, because that implies humor, that flippancy throughout all the way to the end. And it yeah, it did not, it just lacked so much nuance for a 1,000-page book to be this lacking in nuance. I don't, yeah, this.
Well, wait a minute. You didn't like this nuance here? That if you strike a deer on your chopper, it's bad, but a grizzly chasing a deer is worse. That's wicked heavy nuance there.
Well, what about the nuance where we got to learn all about how switchbacks work? Because, we'd rather read 5 pages of explanation to looking up a dictionary and just getting it from context.
Now, I listened to this on the audiobook, but I was actually quite prepared for this to be a thrill and finish and built up, right? And I was sort of in and enjoying it. And then we had that thing. And this is the point I went, Neal Stephenson doesn't even give a shit about this. He just had Richard do a big fart. Did I mishear that?
Yeah, same, same.
He doesn't even, I was like, he doesn't give a shit about this anymore. It's just like, I don't know what to write here.
Yeah,
He's just going to do a really
exactly.
big fart.
That's how the end felt to me. Like, he didn't give a shit. Like, he wrote 1,000 pages, and then he's like, "Yeah, I'm done. Let's end this thing." And that's what angered me. I'm like, you put us through 1,000 pages and you can't be bothered to finish it up properly. I hated the way in which Jones died. It was just, it didn't build up to it. It didn't make sense. It was just, okay, we can be done now, right? After 200 freaking pages. of this. We can be done now, and that's it. That's all I got from it. Not okay. It built up to this big roaring scene, and okay, now I'm trying to be fair, but I'm going to take the audiobook narrator down with the author, I guess. But the I mean, do you think that you listen to this on audio, right, Chris? That the tone in which all of this was narrated, as if they were reading a history textbook, that may have impacted the. And I don't think I would have enjoyed it if I'd read it visually, but I
No, you wouldn't
do
have.
wonder if I would have,
Not at all.
if I would have hated it as much.
Yes,
If
you would have.
okay, good. Glad we've got that sorted out. The audiobook narrator can stay.
I will say
God.
I'm going to try, because obviously we're trying to have a rational discussion about this. I'm going to try and be a bit more analytically critical of why it didn't work for me, because a lot of this stuff is stuff that surface level just really annoyed me. There's no doubt. But I think if we go back to Jones as a character, he was kind of set up as this kind of international mastermind criminal. And I kind of thought through part of the books, okay, they're sort of setting him up as being dangerous and what that else. Because it doesn't, he is that dangerous that it doesn't matter that he's out of his comfort zone in some ways, because he can go to the mountains and he still is dangerous there. And I thought, actually, that gives him some gravity as a bad guy. That gives him some chops. The other guys, I sort of expected that after a while they'll get the comeuppance from fighting in the snow or whatever else, because they're very far from that. But the fact that he gets caught out kind of so easily by this kind of cougar thing at the end again just destroys all that, narratively from a character point of view, is that he didn't think about the things. And it didn't bother them earlier on when the cougar was thrown around the camp. And I know Jones wasn't there at the time. That was just Zula's planting her escape by planting the food, etc., and getting them to fight. But it didn't bother anybody else. Like, as soon as she escaped, they found her immediately. Like, again, I find that very hard to believe. While there's cougars rolling around the camp or other things fighting around the place, they were broken up from their sleep and they were straight away, and away they went down and found her in this house. And then when they got that really competent part, they got to the house and they couldn't find her. They were all over the place and couldn't get anywhere near, and everything's sort of like in aid of creating excitement but not danger, if that made sense. You know what I mean? Every time there was excitement created, even when she was making her escape with Chet got injured, she doesn't. So there's excitement but no danger. And for me, it just meant there was no point really engaging with the action that was going on, because you knew what was going to happen at the end of it.
Yeah. And it's too bad, because there are certain points, like you brought up the Jones being in his elements in the mountains and how it reminded him of Afghanistan, and that could have been explored. Like that, an author could have taken that and run with it, like explore that, explore the psychological impact of having a similar terrain, and for somebody who is in that situation, who is a jihadist, who is used to being on the run from a international power, whether it be Russia or the United States in Afghanistan, and relate that to the situation at hand, and being on the run from either Canadian Mounties or American, police forces, but he doesn't go there. He doesn't give you that introspection. He doesn't give you that psychological factor that would make Jones an interesting character. Even if he was a bad guy and you didn't like him, he still could have been interesting if all that was explored, but it wasn't. And even when the even when Olivia's going through the countryside and she's making these observations about how it's just like anywhere else in America, instead of the backwoods hillbillies that she's expecting.
Sorry,
yeah. That could have been explored, but once again it wasn't. She just meets up with him and says, "All right, boys, let's have a shootout," and it and it's just nothing is all this stuff is side mentioned, but it's none of it's explored, and none of it has relevance to the actual outcome of the story, other than Thanksgiving is good.
Time for celebration.
What I don't understand. I don't think there is any way to justify this 200-page long action sequence, because that's what we read, and we started at the beginning of this day, and the whole thing was about like the convergence of all these characters, right? I really honestly don't think we needed 200 pages of that. I can understand if someone says, okay, I want to make, I don't mind detours in stories. Like if they don't add to the plot story, whatever, I don't mind them if, it sort of fits in and sort of like a side quest sort of thing, and maybe we're exploring a character's inner monologuing or whatever that helps explain. Oh, we get a lot of monologues, but all of those monologues are information that we don't need, or information that it's really strange for them to be dwelling on right this moment. I left a comment on the forum about the fact that Richard has this moment of, oh, he's feeling bliss. Why? Because Zula's found? No, it can't be that, because he'd feel bad about Chet dying. No, actually, you know what it is? It's that he hasn't had to deal with a notification from Twitter or Facebook in a whole day. Are you And then he had that again, a little bit later, about like when he was nearing the end, and he's like, oh, I'll go back to the farm, and then I'll start, I'll have to worry about like the Twitter and Facebook again. I'll have to start looking to my email. Like, yeah, okay, so you and like 7 or 8 other people you love are in this life and death situation, and you're feeling bliss because, hey, no social media. What a great time to make a point about just how distracting social media is, and like maybe eating into our mental health. And it goes nowhere either. It's not like, Richard decides after he comes back that he's going to like give everything up and go live in the mountains and be an ascetic for life. But no, sir, that's just there in the middle of a just making and one like making that action sequence longer quite unnecessarily. um yeah, I don't know, like I don't like action sequences in general, so I could be maybe more bored or biased about this than I might be otherwise, but damn, did it need to go on for so long?
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that action scenes can't last 200 pages, is because you can't hold that level of tension that long. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work in movies. It doesn't work in books. You have to break it up. And if you read any good crime novel, of which there are thousands and thousands in the world, they know very well that location and brevity and having, purpose to it is actually how you do it. Well, I'll give you something that I did sort of like. Okay, I like the fact that Sokolov was sort of in his element, and that he could have. This was actually what he was in the book for, if you know what I mean. Because if there was anybody in the whole plot that was suited to this kind of environment, it's the professional soldier. Because nobody else in this whole book was a professional soldier. So once it came down to it, Sokolov was like, "I got this shit." This was very much in his comfort zone. I can only think that because he did a decent job of actually setting the groundwork for that for me. So I have to give him credit for the fact that Sokolov as a character did the business and met up to the expectations that he'd set up for us. Now, his reasons for doing so, I freaking hate. Honestly, the character motivations of why annoy me, but at least it was consistent with the character that he kind of created the whole way through the story. And he'd spent some time building Sokolov up as a sort of sympathetic character, but somebody that was incredibly professional and good at what he did. He had standing within that, and everybody else was sort of acting up, with the exception probably of Jones and the jihadists. But again, we didn't really get any character building of the kind of fights that they'd had beforehand, of the life they had before, other than they were international terrorists, which is a kind of a nothing statement to make anyway. But I thought the Sokolov stuff at least had some sort of. I actually remember getting through those parts and thinking, well, okay, this makes sense. This I sort of know what's going to happen with him and what's going to go on with it. But yes, so that was the part that I thought did work.
Don't forget there were culturally diverse international terrorists.
That's true. That's true. Very culturally diverse. Yeah. There was nobody called Johnny though. They weren't that diverse. Mike. There was no Mike. You know.
You sure it wasn't one of those American guys? No.
Yeah.
Maybe they go by Mike, but they have an Arabic name. the but in the end, like Jones, if he tried, I think, to make him a character that we can somewhat not relate to, but understand as a person. Like, no, actually, not understand. I don't know. Like he made them vaguely human, right? But he had a mustache twirling moment towards the end, with like, "Who's your friend there, Dodge?" or whatever he said, and before he got shot in the head. Like, what, after all the borderline friendly conversations he had with Zula, now you want to make him sound evil. It it just felt, yeah, it felt inconsistent, and yeah, that's all. I think I hated the epilogue. I hated, like, starting this page was when I was going to give the book a I rate my books for to remember how I liked them. I was going to give it a 3-star rating because
What?
I struggled through
Wow.
parts of it, but whatever. But then the last 3 pages, I was like, yeah, I'm done. I gave it 1.5 in case you're wondering, in case you care. But that was my final
I
rating.
noticed.
Yeah.
Actually, it did stick in my mind because you'd obviously been talking for a while about the fact that the epilogue or the Transgiven thing was 4 hours long. But in true nature of
Yeah.
this whole story and the audiobook, they just fucked up the chapter markers. I mean, that was
Yep.
it. Day
Yep. That they
21
did.
was not day 21. Day
Yeah.
21 was day 20, and day 21 that they called in the chapter markers was day. The ending credits were day 21 and onwards. It was just like, okay, this is
And the game thing also didn't, it was just there. This
Didn't.
could have been
Yeah.
any story without the game, and it would not have made a difference.
Yeah.
Um
T Rain made no difference
yeah,
whatsoever. It
exactly.
really
It
didn't.
and it's a pity because the TV and stuff is probably the best part of the book. You know, the world building that he did, the setting up of that, trying to create that reason for that existing, the kind of economy stuff, a lot of the machinations of that is, for me, the most interesting part of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I even enjoyed those bits. I didn't like unmitigatedly hate this book. It was just all the action sequences, characters, many things that I tend to latch onto and like in a book, I did not like in this at all. Sorry, Jared, what were you saying?
No, I just think I kind of wishing we had two different books here. We had a
Mm,
short 2 to 300 page sci-fi T Rain book that actually, the T Rain stuff had some weird impact on the real world. That'd be the sci-fi part, and we have, a resolution around that. And then we have the super soldier spy thriller Sokolov, the main character,
yeah.
uh, and we get a nice little three to 400 page spy thriller with him, just him,
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
viewpoint or whatever, and dealing with whatever, but maybe hunting down international terrorists as a job or something like that, and I think like you said, he was that was were the interesting parts, and the T Rain were the interesting parts, and he had this weird mesh that just didn't work,
Yeah. Like trying to
and
force it all together. Yeah.
and then he forced all this other stuff in between the good stuff that absolutely didn't work, and it was what's your favorite terminology there, Chris? A hot mess? Is that what it
A
was?
hot mess. Yeah. Went full Reamde. Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you kind of get on the very good point. All the relationships within this don't work. The romantic relations don't work. I mean, the Marlon Musha thing, I honestly was like, well, obviously, what's the reason for Musha being the story? To be an attractive partner for Marlon. Like, that, okay, right, that's fine. Everybody else is in love with Zula. Everybody has to be attracted to somebody, within the story. The females felt very rote, as in a lot of their thing was just to be pretty, and be attractive for the males, which was like, honestly. Especially considering, like, in large part, Zula and Olivia are the action stars, the heroes of it in a lot of ways. If you were going to pick those kind of heroes, because Sokoloff drops in and out, Richard's not there for a long time, but they're the kind of people that are there from the start. And those relationships, like if there was any romance or anything, you certainly don't get a feeling like, oh God, Olivia and Sokolov are destined to be. Marlon and Musha are, I mean, they're both Chinese. That's what they have in common. I mean, in a country full of that many people, I mean, they were destined to be together. Obviously, you know, because she parked a truck outside his place where he was conning people out of millions of pounds. Like I don't really know, like what the hell, like
and he had Olivia, you know, figuring out all this stuff.
yes.
And then when it all came down to it, it didn't really seem to matter that much.
Got her there. It was enough to get her to the place.
Enough to get her there, you know. And yeah, but it was just like and like we got no resolution at all with Marlon creating the name of the book in the first place. We got like none. Like Richard, aren't you like a little mad at this guy? At all? No, come to Thanksgiving. We're all friends now, and you know.
He probably made a lot of money off of it, so maybe, you know, he's treating the guy to dinner because
Right. Yeah. You almost got my niece killed, but you made me a lot of money, so come on over for Thanksgiving dinner.
Good man. Everybody meet Marlon. Meet Marlon. Good farmer.
Yeah.
got my brother actually killed, sort of. Not exactly, but, you know, it was
Yeah.
because of that mess, yeah.
One of my good friends, he's dead. But, you know, come on
That
over.
too. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can always get more
literally.
friends, you know. That's probably the core theme of it.
How do you write 1,000 pages and not resolve Reamde?
In a book called Reamde.
Well, he doesn't. Reamde wouldn't exist anymore because he's in love now, and that love conquers all.
Oh, yeah. How could I forget?
And the only reason she's in the book is Reamde a fucking shotgun so she can shoot somebody. I mean, that's a character arc. From meeting a girl on the street in China to ending the book with a shotgun in her hand blowing a terrorist up. I mean, that's a hell of a character arc.
Yep.
And you
Every
know,
girl's
we
dream, right?
really need to know about that the Boston Bacon has to carry around a bag apparently, and of course we need to make a few jokes about that.
Yeah.
Bacon. Streaky bacon.
Streaky bacon. Thin, lean bacon is thinner and leaner.
Thin, lean, crisp.
Crisp. Left on the pan for too long, right?
Left on.
Yeah. My God, what a book. What a 7 weeks of my life.
Oh God. Honestly, I feel like I started the time machine like 2 seconds after finishing this, I think. Or maybe I started sooner than that. I don't know. But I'm giving that book a hard time because of the bad hangover I have from this book. Oh man.
That's funny. I have the opposite thing. I think every other book that I'm reading off this is the greatest work of fiction I have ever read, including the non-fiction book that I'm reading. This is not a good one. I find it hard to find redeeming things about it.
It was not hard to read.
No, it was not.
There you go.
I like the color of the cover, the paperback cover.
I now have a murder weapon. There you go. There's another one. I have a hand. If somebody breaks into my house tonight, I have something sitting beside my bed that will save my family.
So you're gonna keep it next to your bed, like that's gonna be an ongoing thing.
Well, it's about the same height as a bedside table, to be perfectly honest. So
Okay.
I mean, I can put a drink on it, I can put a fan on it, you know.
Nice. And then, you know, hurt people with it if they intrude your
Yeah,
home.
exactly. If I need to, no, that's going straight to the charity shop. Oh no, I wouldn't do that to anybody. It's going straight.
If you want something that you don't have to think about, that is a really quick read, because you really need to waste time, this is the book for you. And
quick read is a relative term there because it feels like you're reading quickly, but there's 1,000 pages of it.
Look, it's the perfect book to bring with you to a desert island, because you think it's going to entertain you. You'll read 300 pages of it and go, there's got to be better shit to do in this desert island than fucking read this book. I'm gonna build a boat.
It's inspiration for boat building. All right.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's probably a long 3-page info dump in there about how boats work that you could use.
Yes. How do boats work?
Oh
Like
yeah,
Neal
yeah.
Stephenson.
It's in
Oh
China, right?
god.
I
Yeah.
I'm
mean,
sorry,
these are
Neil.
literal info dumps in this book. Sorry, last thing I'll say, and I'll be done ranting. Like the literal info dumps. Like, why did we need to hear about switchbacks in the middle of an action sequence that's already too long? Why does everybody need a hobby, an obscure hobby that helps explain why they know a certain thing? They can just be readers. Maybe they heard it on the internet. Maybe they watched the news. Why do we need all these explanations in the middle of an action sequence?
Why
That's all.
was there no bear at the end hunting for blood? I mean, I thought that was definitely going to happen. I thought
No,
that
no. You just don't run into them on your bicycle. That's all.
Yep, yep, yep.
While they're chasing deer.
Why do bears chase deer? Aren't bears vegetarian, or is that a category of bears that are vegetarian?
Uh, wait, let me look that up in the info dump here. Okay. Jeez.
This is an encyclopedia in disguise.
I actually have encyclopedias that are shorter than this book in the next room next door. I should stop being so mean.
Okay.
Let's just say I didn't really
Yeah.
enjoy this book, and if we were to ever do a ranking of the books that we've read and speculative speculations, to skip the first 5 minutes of it, because this will definitely be bottom.
Yes,
Sorry.
I agree. Like I said, I put up with most of the book, even though there were many, many elements in it that I did not like, and I would, it was okay. I did not hate it until the last 3 pages. At that point, the author completely lost me, because when you put your reader through 1,000 pages, I feel like we deserve a better conclusion than the one we got. But that's just me. Um, this it is a pretty good well rated book. I think. What's the Goodreads rating?
It's nearly 4, something like
Yeah,
No
that.
there you
way.
go. A lot of people like this book.
So I mean, maybe I dragged you to down with me. Maybe my general kind of pessimism about this ruined the book for you two, and for that I can only apologize.
I don't think you did, Chris. I genuine like I skim listened to the last 200 pages. Like that's not something you did. I got bored. But again, that's a preference thing. I don't like action sequences, so let's call that one on me. But the last 3 pages, yeah, I did not like the conclusion. So that one is a very personal anger I have against the book. But yeah. 3.99. That's very nearly 4 stars. I see a lot of people like, and it's not even a small amount of ratings. That's 56,000. So don't listen to us. Go read this book, I guess.
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me. I don't know. I never went in for the rating thing, so I'm not sure
Yeah.
how people are rating these or why they give what stars they do. Some people just don't like to give lower than 3 or 4 stars. So who knows?
Maybe people find it incredibly entertaining. If depending on what episode they're reading. They obviously did, or else they wouldn't be a rating that high. I think at the very end of it, it just comes down to the fact that this is no sci-fi in it, really.
Hmm.
We went in looking for a sci-fi book, maybe, and it just wasn't there, and that left us
That
empty.
Yeah, that did not help its cause with us.
Yeah. The stuff that usually drives conversations for these discussions, I think, was missing, among other things. But definitely.
And like I also read a book last week that is 115 pages long that I could talk about for hours, literal hours on it. So like length and all of those kind of things can not be a thing to say about how much depth a book has in it. It can be as deep as a puddle sometimes, or have plenty in them, or otherwise,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. That's interesting. And I think we talked about this a lot during the previous discussions. A lot of my issues with it were also due to length, right? Like this could be condensed and maybe it would have been a more enjoyable book. But I did want to ask a more, I guess, philosophical question in that regard. Like, do you feel like a longer book must have must do more? Like, what are some things that you feel like a long book needs to do to deserve its length? Like for me, the fact that it's 1,000 pages long and completely lacks nuance in its character exploration or situation, or like the pointless philosophizing that some of them do, those bother me. I'm like, but I could read a 2,000 page long book that do those things better, even if it's a lot very meandering and detoury. So I was curious if you guys have any deal breakers with respect to long books.
Deal breaker. I mean, this book is the antithesis of a good short story composition course.
Hmm.
It is where every word's important, and we been reading quite a few examples of other stories and other authors where every word is important, and they managed to write 600 to sometimes 1,200 page books. So it can be done, and this book is not an example of that. It boggles my mind that somebody who obviously can write a lot, and I imagine he's a doctor or something or whatever. I don't know what his background is, but he has a lot of background in um uh the early stages of the internet and stuff like that from way back in the 90s or whatever. And so I'm not sure what his background is as far as creative writing training goes, but obviously he just did whatever he wanted with this book, and he didn't follow a lot of the precepts that people use for word economy um, and for getting across ideas and themes in an economical, even if it's a flowery manner. You can even if you have the most flowery language in the world, you can still get across a theme and a point and an idea in a manner that doesn't um, insult the reader by this this uh, this explanation of an action after the fact because you didn't think to mention it before. And you have to explain why the character knows so much about bears all of a sudden. That
Okay.
that's not economical. That's just spitting out words because maybe he just likes he likes the process of actually typing and writing and just in doing that, and that's fine. Um, and that can work for people who want to just relax, read, and not think about things, and just root for the Zula. Just root for hope he's and in the back of your mind know she's gonna win, um, and know that Olivian's gonna win because that's you're projecting yourself on the character, and you just want that person to win. You want Richard to come on top, or whatever, and that's and unfortunately, when you throw a book like that um into a format like this, where we're picking apart every page that goes by, and we're picking apart every sentence, and we're looking for themes, and we're looking for characterization, and we're looking for reasoning behind why the character's going through what they are, and all those things that critical analysis looks for in literature. You throw a book like this in there, it's not the right fit, and it's not going to hold up very well, unfortunately. I don't blame the book for that. That's our fault. But
Um,
because it is what it is. It's a book.
This is something actually we talk about in the context of films. We're doing the Oscars project at the moment, and we talk about length of film quite a lot in that case, especially around the time when it seemed like in order to create a serious film, it needed to be of a certain length. If you're writing about if you're doing a biopic about somebody, it must be at least 3 hours long. If you're going to do it justice, that's what you've got to do. But it doesn't. A long movie does not a good movie make, and a short movie doesn't make a bad movie or a good movie. It's all about what you do with that time and with that length.
Yeah,
and you can make an amazing movie, you can make an incredible book that's 1,000 pages long. I mean, there are many examples about it. I'll give you Stephen King's The Stand. I'll give you Count of Monte Cristo. I'll give you lots. I mean, Count of Monte Cristo is probably a very good analogy for this because it is an action book. It is an easy read. It's something that does what this purports to do in a lot of ways, but uses those 1,000 pages to tell an epic adventure. And this book tries to do the epic part in terms of the country hopping and the kind of breadth of story, but it doesn't achieve it because it doesn't do, for me anyway, the things that you need to make a good story, which is create peril for your characters in an adventure story. You need to create people that you understand the motivations and why they're doing what they're doing, rather than just giving them a label, which may as well be, a black coat, the man in black kind of thing, rather than doing that, which this book often does. It calls people terrorists, therefore they must be bad. You don't get a sense of why somebody from Wales became an international terrorist. Again, there was interesting stuff to furrow there, to dive into. You had the page count to do it. You could have cut any number of bits out of this book, and in fact, you could have restructured the whole book in a lot of ways. I think you get kind of tied by the problems of telling it in sequential order like he did with this day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. I think that created some problems for him in terms of when he was come to write it, because I think if he could have done like a flashback bit where he cut to Jones meeting his crew at the start and done all of that start and used the time there, it could have paid off much further down the event. But as you said, Jared, this idea that a character development or a story development happens and we have to tell you in the spot there now about the justification and the reasons why, means that it reads a little bit like an AI story, in which case they produced a bit of text and you queried it and said, could you give me a character justification for this at this stage? And then it inputs that bit in. And that's sort of, it reads like a writing project rather than a well thought out, constructed novel. And for that reason, I'm out, as they would say in Dragon's Den. But I did read it all, so
It's a little late to be out.
Who's the winner and loser now? I don't know. I think I may have just talked myself around in this one. Damn.
Those were great answers. So that seems like a good note to end this on. Any final closing thoughts?
I can't wait for next week.
Can't wait to get back to sci-fi.
Wait. Yes. All right. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week with A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martin. That's all. And a short story by Ursula Le Guin. Thank you so much. Bye.